thank you everybody so much for joining us today. We're going to be talking all things the state of Georgia today. So thank you for registering for our webinar from Atlanta to Savannah, Cultivating Student Success Using SmarterMeasure. My name is Tara McLaughlin. I am a Senior Customer Success Manager here at SmarterServices, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Carol Moody. She is the Senior Sales Manager here at SmarterServices. We also have some guest speakers from Augusta University, Corey Victor and Gina Bolin. We'll be bringing them on in a minute and more formally introducing them. But I wanted to go ahead and do a couple of housekeeping items. Again, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We are recording this webinar, and we will be sharing that webinar after the recording, along with the links to this slide deck. If you'd like to take notes, please do so, but you'll have all of these slides if you want to refer back to them, and any free resources we're sharing. So those will all be shared with you. Please pass those on to your colleagues if you would like to do that as well. If you have any questions, this is a webinar instead of a meeting, so Zoom has disabled the chat. So if you could just use that Q&A button or in the bar, that would be very helpful, and we can check those at the end. So for the agenda, you saw that in your registration. We're going to do a lot of things Georgia, as I said. So we're going to talk about sweet beginnings, using SmarterMeasure to set the foundation for student success, which actually sort of mirrors, we have a play on the cultivation of peaches, since Georgia peaches, those are synonymous with each other. We'll also talk about data-driven decision-making. So using readiness data to create a transformative experience for your new students. And then we'll talk about challenges that are faced uniquely to the state of Georgia or system of Georgia students, and how SmarterMeasure can serve as a bridge to success. We'll also talk about Augusta University online and how they use SmarterMeasure, so a success story. And then some interventions, how you can use the data from SmarterMeasure to empower your advisors, faculty, success coaches with targeted interventions to ensure students stay on the right trajectory for success. Sweet beginnings. So wanted to start with some facts about some peaches. It's actually ironic because when we were doing our research for this webinar, I was surprised to find out that Georgia is actually third among all United States, or the states, as far as peach producers. First is California, followed by South Carolina, and then Georgia. But, you know, I live in the state of Alabama, so I see your Georgia tags all over the place, and you've got peaches even on your license plate. So it's just interesting. I was interested to see some facts about your harvest season. It's early May to September. And again, being in Alabama, that's pretty typical for ours as well. Southern peaches tend to be more fuzzy yellow and orange, while California peaches tend to be more red in color. And this was something that I experienced maybe last summer when I was making a peach cobbler with fresh peaches. That the first peaches of the season are those clingstone peaches, but by middle to late season, the flesh of the peaches actually don't cling to the seed so much, and those are called freestone peaches. So those are my preferred ones. I like the freestone peaches, I guess. So get those later in the season. And peaches are a great source of vitamins A and C. So who knew? I didn't know those things. But supporting students is a lot like raising peaches. So while the challenges are of course different, they both require a nurturing environment. So both students and peaches need the right conditions, the right soil, the right climate, the right water to thrive, if it's peaches, but students as well. It takes time for both to grow and develop. So success won't happen for your students overnight. You need to be patient and persistent, as do they. They also need to adapt to challenges, whether it's learning hurdles for your students or bugs and freezes if it's your peach crop. Individualized care. Just like peaches need different care, students have unique needs too. So identifying that and meeting the students where they're at is critical to their success. And it's a long-term investment. It's not going to happen overnight. There will be challenges, but taking the time and the effort to help your students succeed will pay off in the long run. And then eventually you do get to enjoy the future fruits of your labor, or your students do, as far as their success, or juicy peaches if it's that. But how and when, this is critical. You determine what support services that each student needs. That's really, those are two of the main questions to ask. And having that readiness data is key when you do decide to provide the support and how you to provide your support. SmarterMeasure is the way to identify a lot of these areas. When we talk about readiness data, success, retention, those types of data points, what we're talking about specifically with SmarterMeasure is the non-cognitive skills. So I'm not going to read this verbatim to you. You can see we look at multiple facets of the learner, a lot of different constructs, whether it's internal to the learner, external with their environmental scan of life factors, and then we look at specific skills. So students may have successes in a lot of these areas, and that's great. That's an immediate win that they can leverage, right? But what about the areas where they need support? It could be that they're a procrastinator, a master at procrastinating. It could be that they're not the best typist, right? So there's a lot of areas where students can improve, and it can make great gains early in their journey to their success. So taking this data to heart is so much more, it's greater than making assumptions. It's easy to make assumptions. Yeah, we're gonna, put all of our resources in this one bucket here, but it may not serve the greatest need, right? There might not be a lot of students who need support in X, but some might need support in that, but others might need support in another area. So using the data to your advantage is where you can really make strides. It gives real facts about students, not just guesses. You can tailor your support, again, addressing specific needs for each student. And they'll feel that you care because you're taking the time to personalize that support, right? And this data works better than alternatives or just making assumptions. You can use this data to track where you need to improve. Maybe there's some gaps in services that you're not providing that you didn't realize when you look at the data of your students overall. And this readiness data, it's just as important as cognitive data. You can't just focus on the students' GPAs or their prior success in other degree programs. It's really using this data on top of other cognitive pieces. That's where you're going to see the most gains. All right, so let's talk about some data, some statistics, and this is specific to the state of Georgia. So when do students drop out of school? It's typically they're most vulnerable to dropping out within that first year. So that's so critical to give them the support that they need when they're early, when they're new to your school. Roughly 25% of first-year college students don't return for their second year to any school, and 35% don't return to your school. They'll find another school. Others might hit a roadblock later on, but still, if you take the time and the effort to onboard your students properly so that they know what is expected of them at your institution and just in general to being a successful student overall, then you'll have the greatest gains. And this was interesting too to note that college dropouts make less income than students who finish and get a bachelor's degree. And they're also more likely to be unemployed than someone who has a degree. So it's imperative to help students make it across the finish line, not just that first year, but on and on and on until they're complete with that degree. And then specific to the state of Georgia, here's some stats that we pulled. The sources are at the bottom here if you ever want to view those. But over 770,000 students of Georgia have some college, but no degree. So new Georgia dropouts make up about 6.7% of the nationwide some college no degree total. College dropouts who go back and complete their degree in the state of Georgia make up about 9% of the national completer population. And again, I won't read these all verbatim, but about 2% of all college dropouts live in the state of Georgia. So recruiting students takes a lot of money. So retaining the students that you have can save you a lot of money, right? It's more expensive to get a new student than to keep the students that you have. So seeing everything through that lens can really go so far. Student recruitment efforts require institutional expenditures. You have to hire staff, travel funding, marketing costs to try to attract these new bodies, right? Whereas in contrast, retaining students, when you're managing student enrollment, it's 3 to 5 times more cost effective than the recruiting. So a student who is retained at an institution for 4 years will generate the same income as 4 new students who leave after 1 year. So why should you measure non-cognitive skills, these readiness skills? They're often the reasons why your students aren't engaging and why they're more vulnerable to be those first year dropouts or, not returning that second year. Maybe they're just not motivated. Maybe they're juggling a whole lot of responsibilities in their personal life. Maybe they're a single mom working full time. Maybe they're working 2 jobs and maybe taking care of an elderly parent. So time is not on their side. So helping them prioritize the time that they do have, or maybe drop a few things that are not critical to their day-to-day just while they're in school. School's temporary, right? So helping them prioritize the time that they do have. Or maybe they don't have technology skills, or they're apprehensive about their skills. They don't have a lot of confidence in those skills. If you provide them some tutoring and workshops around technology to get them a little more confident, that can go so far for those students. Oftentimes they don't want to ask for help because they think they should already be up to square, right? These non-cognitive skills or readiness factors are also more malleable and actionable than some of the fixed predictors of success, like socioeconomic status or first-gen status. Students can't change if they're the first person to go to college in their family overnight, but they can change if they procrastinate. Through self-awareness and prescriptive strategies for support, you can make a big impact. And supporting every student. This is, again, where this data can come in and really help with your students understanding that you care. And whether you're a brick and mortar ground student, those students, they have the likelihood of taking online or hybrid classes mixed with their face-to-face options. They're going to take a combination of those, right? Gone are the days where your traditional students are just taking ground classes. They're going to take a mixture. So looking at this readiness data can really help because they're going to have challenges like the life factors, or staying organized and prioritizing their time. But your online students, that's another unique population because those are probably your single moms or your working moms or dads who are going to school to get a better job than they have right now. So they've got often that family and that job and other obligations that they're trying to manage. And they also, again, might have some technology gaps. Maybe they don't have access to technology because they're working all day. So they can't really just log in and look in their coursework. They have to do everything outside of work hours. And SmarterMeasure can be a vital component of an orientation, which we'll talk about in a moment. Sections of this can be delivered even in a disaggregate mode. So if you have specific topics in your orientation that you're working toward, you can offer just the parts of SmarterMeasure that address that. Students can reflect and then move on. That's what we call like our disaggregate mode. But what about your first year students, right? So that freshman year, that very vulnerable time in the student's journey. You can administer SmarterMeasure again in that onboarding. It's a place to provide insight into the student's readiness. You're putting that mirror up to that new student's face. Here's your strengths. Here's your areas that you need to grow in. And here's how we can help you make those goals and to grow. But what about your special populations? This is something that SmarterMeasure can help with as well, because whether they're TRIO students or maybe you have a QEP on student success for your online students, we have a school in Florida who's doing that, and they have custom questions that they ask students. They do a pre and a post test model with SmarterMeasure. They want to see growth, but they also ask some custom questions in the very beginning of that pre-test. But even if you're using Upward Bound or the talent search, which are traditionally those K-12 students, we have a secondary version of SmarterMeasure that you could use for that audience. So now I would like to, because it's so much easier for me to sit here and say what I want to say, but you always would like to hear it from a school who's using SmarterMeasure and how they've made it happen, what they've done, and recognize too that all of this doesn't happen overnight either. Oftentimes, schools who use SmarterMeasure, there's several years of getting it right and getting it in place to how you want it to be. But it's SmarterMeasure can help you from day one because you're collecting that readiness data. So just know when we talk to Gina and Corey, they're in a new position of using SmarterMeasure. And I'd love to hear maybe a part two later on sometime in a little while. But they are from Augusta University, as we said, which is a public research university in the state of Georgia. They have several campuses, plus they have launched a new online campus, and that's who you're going to be hearing from. I think this could be wrong. I'm not sure. I looked online and there's about 10,500 students. I don't know if that's including your new online program. So perfect. Yes. Well, Corey is the AVP of online education at Augusta University online. His contact information is here, but he has a wealth of experience starting online programs at several different institutions, and we have worked with him at multiple schools, and we're just so blessed to have Corey working with us now, as well as Gina. She is the Director of Online Student Support Services. So we've been working with them, I want to say, since last year early, but the conversations were starting in the year before that. So to maybe December 2022. But as you'll see, they'll just talk about where they're at now, and I will drive your slides for you guys. So I'm just going to move on, and just let me know when you want me to move to the next slide.
Sure. I'll start it. Tara, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting us. While Tara indicated that we've been working together since summer of 2023, that's not really true. Well, with Augusta University, it's been true. This is actually the third school that I've worked at since 2010, where I've brought SmarterMeasures on board. And in fact, she doesn't know this, but I brought SmarterMeasures to 3 continents. We had a last school that I worked for was in China. They were taking SmarterMeasures, and in Egypt they were taking SmarterMeasures. So you were in Africa and Asia, and of course in the United States, and now in Georgia. So we have a long-standing relationship. You've always been very good to the programs that I've built, and when I got here, I just felt it was a no-brainer. Now, what makes this program different than the other programs that I've worked with in the past is that this is a program for graduate students. In the past, I've used it for undergraduate students, and I've used more of what's in SmarterMeasures because undergraduates are different than graduate students. So they need a different survey in a way. So what's nice about SmarterMeasures is that it's customizable. So you can pull out certain components and add a whole bunch of questions that you think you would like to learn. And we'll share with you, Gina will in a little bit share with you what we ask, what we look at, and additional questions that we ask. But when I got here, I realized that this was really a no-brainer. And for me, it served multiple purposes. Well, you can read all the numbers of all that we have. And by the way, we're 300 plus now, and in a couple of weeks we'll be 450, and then by the fall we'll be somewhere upwards of 700 students. By this time next year, we'll be well over 1,000. So we're growing at an incredible rate. So why did I bring SmarterMeasures on? Why do I have it come with me everywhere I go? Because I think it serves a lot of different purposes. And for Augusta University, the first part was that I wanted them to have an opportunity as learners who might have not been in school for a long time. And in fact, we know that our average age for all of our programs is 33 years old. And these are people who haven't been in school for quite a long time, and they need to really step back and reflect about what it's like to be an online student, what kinds of skills are needed, and where do they stand, right? They have to be, we know that from looking at this for a while that, for example, time management is a major issue, as well as locus of control. So we have to get them thinking about what it's going to take for them to be successful. So that's one of the main reasons why I brought SmarterMeasures there. The other reason was that I needed faculty to understand, what it takes for a student to be an online learner. online learning really, in the way that we're delivering it at AU, it's different than what they've been experiencing in the past. So it's much more of an immersive program, and faculty have to understand, really, if they're going to help students and work with students, what does it take for students to be successful, and what should they be aware of? So we actually have, I don't know if I said, if we said this also, but later on, but not only do we have an online student, there it is. Not only do we have an online student orientation, but we have an online faculty orientation. So our faculty are also taking this measure and really understanding how they would fare as an online student. So it meets that need to. It's important for them to see it from that perspective. And finally, we're having them work in D2L Brightspace, and it's not an easy LMS to work with. It can be difficult. We're doing our best, but we need to be able to teach students in orientation how to maneuver around. How do they submit an assignment? How do they participate in a discussion? How do you take an assessment? So we're using smarter measures as one of the linchpins in the orientation, so that when they take their smarter measure, they can then engage in a discussion about it. They can write a paper about it and submit it. So not only are they reflecting and thinking about where they are also learning how to use the tools at the same time. So, it serves multiple purposes. So really, this measure is really at the heart of our orientations. And I have to say that they've been very successful. One of the things that's not on the slide is our retention rate. And our retention rate is right now is at 89%. And that's pretty good. I mean, I think our boss, I just saw a webinar from him. He's thinking about 92%. Well, let's see where that goes. But 89%, our first time out, is really important. And I do think that smarter measures on some level, as part of the orientations, played a role in that. So that's how we use it. You could click to the next slide. So Jeannie, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so when we were looking to develop orientation and to utilize smarter measures, all of our students, they are 100% online. So the orientation itself is fully online, asynchronous. And students, it's consisted of 5 modules, which the main module that I really want to talk about is module 3, where we discuss academic preparedness with smarter measures using that data specifically. So the students will go ahead and they'll take their assessments and they will view their results. So not only are they viewing the results and seeing where they are personally, but then they're going to do a discussion board and they're going to talk about that. So that way other students can see where they are, because one of the things we want to be developing is a community. A community of online students is going to entail, their program, their struggles, their successes, things like that. And when students can partake and enjoy other students' struggle, they can enjoy other students experiencing the same goals, the same strategies, the same instances of weaknesses. I think that is what is really connecting a lot of these students to build and maintain throughout their cohort until they progress and graduate, or until they graduate, I'm sorry. Another thing that in module 3 that they're doing is they're writing a paper in APA. So they're taking their results. They have to use 2 different sources to kind of go off of their results and how that has impacted them, how that is allowing them to make a plan. So we're integrating APA standards so that way they can get familiar. A lot of students struggle with APA, MLA, any of the type of citation styles, but because we're dealing with graduate students, they are very heavily in APA. And to get accustomed to those things, we went ahead and added that so that way they're doing a paper that's relying on their results. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Here is where we are looking as administrators. This is for success coaches. This is for my entire team. We are looking for the reds. The greens are great, but we are looking for the reds. As I noted I'm currently doing a PhD program, and our orientation is my case study. I found it to be very insightful, as you stated, Tara, that students will drop out within the first year. And that is very prominent. That is and online students at that suffer from that fate 3 times higher. The statistic for a student to drop out online is 3 times higher than that traditional face-to-face. So how can we go ahead and combat that? How can we go ahead and help these students? And the few things that we look at specifically are the life factors in the individual attributes. As you notice, there is a very small green space. There's a blue space, but the red is where we really look. We're looking at what areas are they really struggling in. We take those answers, and for example, if it's time management, we're going to have our success coaches reach out to those students when things are due. Okay, well, yeah, I know that you are taking 2 classes. I know that you're going to have a test this week, and then you have to do a paper for your next class. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's get that mojo starting. Let's get that plan so that way you feel in control of everything that is happening within your academic career. That right there, even having that access to support where a student is feeling, okay, I got this. I can do this because I have somebody that's in my corner. I have somebody that knows what I'm struggling with, and I have somebody that can help motivate and prepare me for what's around the corner. You can go ahead and talk, sorry, next slide. These are our specific questions that we decided to ask. These are questions that I have found very influential for a student's ability to persist. For example, have you taken online classes? Why did you enroll in this program? If a student doesn't understand their why, they're not as likely to continue and persist. So they have to know why. They have to know what is driving them. It can't just be money. It can't just be, I didn't know what else to do, so I'm doing this. When we have that why, we can really tailor our services to help that student persist and graduate. Also, additional areas where they might need support. So if they already know that they're weak in writing, or they already know that they're weak in math, or they already know this particular area, we can go ahead and target that and really help the underlying issue, whether that is writing. So we can make sure that they are having weekly meetings with our writing center. We can ensure that if they're having writer's block, we can kind of help promote that. Say, oh, well, for example, I had a WIN student who had a really big issue writing a paper. Well, because of this, I knew that we talked about, well, let's do small steps. Let's go ahead and write 1 paragraph. You know that you have to produce a paper by the end of the class. Let's go ahead and make those small steps. Let's write 1 paragraph each week to where you have got a good meat and bones of what you're going to discuss. And then you can spend most of your other time editing and really getting into that. She was ecstatic. She ended up getting an A on the paper. But those are the types of moments where you're like, okay, this is really beneficial because it can help me target what our students' weaker areas are. I did make sure to put in their preferred methods of communications because, as we know, for online students, some students don't want you calling them. Some students would prefer to communicate only through text or, even email. So to have that preferred method of communication, you know that you can always reach a student via one method or another. You can go ahead and continue. So as I discussed with our smarter measures, we do have students reflecting on that. They are writing about where their weak areas are, their plans to go ahead and help support those weak areas. And I think what's the best benefit to this is that other students see strategies. Other students are able to say, oh, you know what? I got lower in the LMS understanding. So if you're going to go ahead and you're going to do a practice tutorial, I would love to do that. Our students love seeing what is common ground among other students so that they don't feel alone. Next slide. And as we discussed, they do a Smarter Measures assessment where they are doing a paper in APA standards. So they're taking that feedback that they receive, they're taking their results, they're taking the feedback that they receive from other students who are in the program, and they are creating a plan of action. What is this plan? They're using real research to help them guide it, to help them create that plan and guide them into being successful. Next slide. All right. So
All right.
I'll go ahead, Corey.
Yeah. So as you can see, we use it in a lot of different ways. We want them to write. We want them to talk to each other. We want them to reflect, and we want them to build community. And that's in that, you know, so we're using it for a lot of different ways. And we also want them to learn how to use the LMS. You know, it's very important that they are first day ready. So this tool, Smarter Measures, has really helped them to become first day ready. So faculty don't have to say to them, you know, they don't have to ask faculty, how do I participate in a discussion? How do I submit an assignment? What is APA? We're prepping them. I should also say that orientation is required. It is not optional. If students do not complete the orientation, they don't start. So we generally have 100% finishing. Everything is moderated and graded by Gina. Once we get some more success coaches, Gina can step to the side and let somebody else take that over. But we've really learned a lot from them. Like Gina said, it's I didn't really have the full vision of what it was going to become, but here's what's next. You know, it's not enough that the data is just living in the courses, because that would be very, very limiting. Right? They do all this work. We have to do something with it. So we have to find ways, and Gina's already finding ways to take that data and utilize it in success coaching. As she gave a good couple of examples there. But we also have to take the next step, which is feeding the data that's downloadable, that we can then put into the CRM, and we can attach that to the particular student. So when the advisors come in to the CRM, they can see exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are. And when they have conversations with the students, which, you know, they do, they can really tailor, you know, it's just another input for them to be able to give them really good advising, and also use this as a way to help to predict success. At some point, we're going to have an algorithm, and this will feed into the algorithm, which will say if a student, for example, if a student is low on locus of control, more than likely they are not going to succeed. So, you know, then that helps us with bigger intervention strategies. So we're really just at the beginning of this. If I was here, if you asked me to come back next year at this time, I'm pretty sure I could give you a whole lot more than I can now. It's successful the way we're using it, but we have bigger plans.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm excited for a phase 2, maybe, or call for that. And actually, one thing you said, Gina, that was really interesting that I noted in your slides too, it's not just the Smarter Measure portion, but they also have to learn how to use a tool that they may have never encountered before, the Turnitin. So they have to run that paper through Turnitin, which is something they'll have to do often as, you know, as they proceed through their coursework too. So yeah, they'll have to turn in an assignment. If they don't know how to do that, they'll learn that in your orientation course. And that's really, really neat to see. We thank you guys so much for helping us out. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Carol's going to pick up from the next slide on. Oh, I unmute.
Thank you. It's great to be able to transition into how SmarterMeasure can help intervene with students, because Corey and Gina have said are doing things just the right way. Some of the things that we feel are most important about a successful implementation and follow-through plan are things that they're doing. So let's talk a little bit more about how SmarterMeasure can help increase student success and some of the tools that we have. You guys could all get together as a team and write 20 readiness questions and throw them out there to your students, right? We know that it's possible to come up with your own readiness assessment, but I think one of the things that we don't do a good job talking about when we're talking about SmarterMeasure with potential clients or with current clients is that we really are serving to really want to be a turnkey solution for you guys, and we want to provide support in multiple ways to help make SmarterMeasure a valuable tool for student success. Corey gave kudos to Tara, who he's worked at with previous institutions. And one of the things you may not realize that when you adopt SmarterMeasure, you just don't get the assessment, but you get the services of a customer success manager who has adopted Smarter, helped many institutions adopt SmarterMeasure, and is really your coach for a successful implementation. Tara has been supporting SmarterMeasure for more years than she probably wants me to say. She still has a very young, vibrant face, but Tara supported SmarterMeasure for upwards of 17 years. So she knows how to coach a school to deliver a successful implementation, and she's an invaluable resource when it comes to implementation, custom questions, how to really connect SmarterMeasure to your students. We also have 24/7 student support through our support team. So if a student is taking SmarterMeasure at 1 a.m., they don't email your customers, they don't email your student success team, they email us. We have 24/7 support teams out there for students. We didn't dive a lot today in the administrative panel, but just know we have a very friendly panel for you to gain your student information, to see what's there, to export it, to share it with the team members at your institution. So access to your data is never a problem. You've got several levels of administrative logins that you'll have access to view your data. And the deeper we go with SmarterMeasure, one of the things we really enjoyed doing these last several years is getting deeper into how we can get this data integrated at your institution. We work with Banner. We work with getting the data. We've got a really, I say slick, but a really sophisticated new Salesforce integration. Those of you that use Salesforce, this student success data is too valuable to keep it siloed. So we like to partner with our institutions to be able to have multiple stakeholders be able to access the student data so that you can leverage it towards success. We're going to talk in a minute about all the implementation resources that we offer. Our student success team is also doing recurring webinars for our clients to really talk about those topics that resonate with student success. At the end of our presentation, I believe Tara's going to share about an upcoming webinar we have about helping students prepare for exams. And we're continuing to add to our repository of student resources, and these can be shared by your success teams with students. And again, it's just gravy, right, that we're supplying our clients with on top of the data from the assessment to really help you leverage our tool for student success. Corey and Gina made a great point about how they're using SmarterMeasure, and that follow-up piece, you can't overestimate how important that is. So we want to give you some suggested follow-up tools so you don't have to, to come up with these ideas from scratch, but you want to make sure that a student is engaging with their SmarterMeasure report to gain some self-awareness, to learn what their challenges are, and to learn how they can make plans for improvement. So we're going to give you some resources there. If you want to use discussion boards, we've got successive discussion board questions. If you want to have an advisor or a success coach and a student come together and make a plan for success through a conversation, we've got a document there that you can use to track those conversations. And then, as Gina mentioned, a paper can be a very great way to reflect on those stores. We've got suggestions for a path to success paper and ways that you can integrate SmarterMeasure into those of you that are doing text nudges and those types of things. These are all resources that we can provide to you. For that orientation assignment, we can work with your customer success manager to show you how other schools have used it. I know the writing may be small here, but this is Ottawa University, and their reflection essay suggests that you write an essay about your strengths and areas you feel need to be improved on to be a successful student. Examine your own challenges in achieving academic success, including time, money, skills, and abilities. And I love this. Include how your mindset can influence what steps you'll take to overcome these challenges. And again, saving the essays in Microsoft Word document. Another reason I like written reflections on SmarterMeasure is it's also a way to get a writing sample from your new student, because you can take a look at that first paper and know, you know what, who should I direct towards the writing center? This is a student that I see is going to be challenged on some of these written assignments by the looks of this very first assignment. So who can I make sure that they know about the resources that we have available through our writing center, or to, a peer mentor or others who can help with writing issues. If you want to use a course discussion board, again, this is another client representation here from Great Basin College. And after a student completes their SmarterMeasure survey, and they review their results, they want them to go to a discussion board. And again, to post on that discussion board, what's your plan to be successful? And so again, this is also a way a discussion board can help build community, right? As Corey mentioned, that's important with building that connection between your program for a fully online learner. Again, they could see students that have similar issues. Sometimes we've seen discussion board posts where they're suggested to reach out to a student that has similar issues that they do as far as ways to improve, and to kind of pair up with that student to brainstorm in ways how they can make a plan for success that semester. So again, we have examples of these orientation assignments and discussion board posts that we can share with you. I mentioned too, again, we want to be turnkey, right? So if you're sharing this data with advisors, and advisors will have access to SmarterMeasure data, SmarterMeasure can really help build that personal relationship between the advisor and the student, because the advisor can see what that student's issues are and what they're dealing with, many times those external life factors, even in that first admission session. I'll remember going to orientation with my son at a 4-year SEC school. And, you know, we went through all the orientation steps, and guess what? When it was time to meet with that advisor, we had about 10 minutes. Can an advisor really know my son in a 10 to 15 minute conversation? If that institution had used SmarterMeasure, that advisor would be able to review that data about my son before they had that conversation. And again, we're even providing advisors with what to say when a student has a strength, or a success coach could use this too. What to say when a student has a strength, what to say if that student has an area for improvement in a particular scale or subscale. And again, these conversations can be tracked and agreed upon with the student. Using this review form. You can even get signatures on those forms to say, okay, this is our plan. Are you on board with it? And again, just another resource that we provide. And again, I talked about how advisors can have access to this data. We even have a specific report to make it really easy to get to the meat of a student's SmarterMeasure report before you have those conversations. So the advisor doesn't have to read through the student's full report. They can go here to look and see what those student issues are on the particular scales and subscales. And again, then go back to this document to help make some notes before they start that student conversation. So it's a real time saver and very important. And then some institutions like to use SmarterMeasure in that first checklist of things that you need to do before you apply to our institution. We have a partner with an institution in Kentucky, Somerset College, who's used SmarterMeasure in an approach with their College Navigator program. We have a great case study that we've linked here. By putting SmarterMeasure in that step of enrollment processes, they gather that data so early that those college navigators can really dig in and push out those student supports and begin those relationships. And they've had an incredible increase in persistence in these students that are involved with these college navigators and that are getting this data to the navigators through SmarterMeasure. Another thing, I don't know if we specifically talked about, but you don't have to deliver the same version of SmarterMeasure to every student population. We can set up different versions of SmarterMeasures for different learners. So if a school uses SmarterMeasure for an undergraduate population, they may want to use more sections of the assessment than someone who's delivering it for graduate students. So you can have different logins for different programs. And you'll see here, we also work with the University of North Georgia, and they have different versions of SmarterMeasure for different student populations, I believe, or you can deliver the same version of SmarterMeasure and just use these different logins to get this data easily into different data buckets for analysis. So again, it can be for two reasons. It can be to analyze the data differently from these populations because of these different usernames and passwords, or again, to have custom versions for different populations. That's just another wrinkle on how you can use the assessment. And again, just to recap here, we've talked about lots of ways that we can help students get smarter about themselves. And it's really about challenging the student to dig into that data and to gain that, that knowledge about themselves to help use what they've learned to make a plan for success. We've had a longstanding relationship with the University System of Georgia. And what we've also done this year is to kind of make the pricing make sense a little bit more than it has in the past. We've moved to 3 tiers that really allow smaller institutions to have more of a chance to begin SmarterMeasure, Also a smaller, even if you're a larger institution, but you've got a special targeted population that you need to deliver SmarterMeasure to, that's more affordable now in the way we've changed these tiers. And also too, we're not trying to penalize our large institutions, because we know some of the Georgia institutions have incredibly large enrollment numbers, but we don't want to make SmarterMeasure out of reach. So moving into 3 tiers, we think makes better sense for both the smaller and our larger institutions. And again, if you're interested in, a price quote, I've got the contact information here for the software store and our contact there, Christy Holloway, who can help you determine what your price quote would be for USG for the tool. But the good news, another good news about the contract is all the technology vetting and all the steps that you have to go through to add a new vendor, all those steps, of course, have been completed by us through our agreement with USG. So it can be a faster implementation since we've already gone through the vetting that we need to be a vendor in the software store. Before we get off the call quickly, just also want to mention that we also work with US eCore and eCampus for proctoring. Some of you may not be aware that in addition to SmarterMeasure, we also offer Smarter Proctoring. And Smarter Proctoring is really a way for you to present proctoring options to your students. We always can have a face-to-face test center option in there for you as well, if you don't want to just offer remote proctoring to your student body. So we have a robust testing center network in Georgia, but you can present your testing center as an option alongside some remote options that we provide, be it live, record and review, or automated. So just know I'm the contact as well. And then also to bring it all back to Georgia, and we've really been baking a cobbler, I guess. We've been talking about picking peaches, and we've been talking about cultivating the soil and getting that feedback. And really, I guess the fresh peach cobbler is the equivalent to the 4-year or the 2-year degree, right? So just wanted to share this recipe that Tara found from Southern Living to make us all hungry. And just to say, we feel like SmarterMeasure could be a vital component in your recipe for student success. Thanks so much for joining. We've got some great resources that we're going to share in the follow-up email. We've got administrator resources, and also we're sharing some of our student resources that you can leverage for your students. Does anybody have any follow-up questions in the Q&A? Thank you so much, Corey and Gina, for doing such a great job with your implementation and really hitting on some of the things that we feel are most important about how to have success with SmarterMeasure.
Carol, can I just jump in before you take questions? Because
Sure.
you said something that really piqued my interest. It's not just that I've stuck with SmarterMeasures since 2014. It's really I've stuck with Tara since 2014. So when the amount of customer service that we've gotten from Tara and from you over the many years makes using SmarterMeasures a no-brainer. I know that I'm never going to be left hanging out there and not knowing what to do. It is really that relationship that we've developed through COVID and everything else that really has kept me coming back over and over again. There may be other products that can do what SmarterMeasure does. Maybe, I don't know, probably not, but I will always go back as long as the customer service is there, and particularly Tara and working with her.
You.
So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Corey. We appreciate that very much. And again, that's why we like to feel like it's more than just an assessment. We really want to help you guys move the needle. And it's easier to move the needle if we've got the tools that you can use to leverage to have a successful implementation, even from the very first semester, right? And our customer success team is a big part of that. Tara and her colleague Claire do a great job helping move the needle for success and helping you guys be successful from the first semester. So thank you for that, Corey. That means a lot.
Thank you. Yes. And we applaud you guys for caring about your students. That's another level of this where you want your students to be successful, right? So you're taking the chance and the strides early on in their journey because that's a very tender moment. They may be graduate students and you're moving it into your undergraduate students eventually, but it really does matter. And it's, thank you for that. And thank you for presenting with us. We appreciate everybody for joining us today. And we wrapped up at 12:49. So if there's no questions, I'm checking the Q&A and I don't see any at the moment. But we'll give you back 11 minutes of your day if there are no questions.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We appreciate
Thank
your time.
We'll be in touch with the recording and all the resources. Thank you so much.